Hello, hello, greetings to one and all. Hello, dear learners. Today I will explain the chapter, the third level of your Vista Supplementary Reader. All right, the first chapter of the third level, the the first chapter of the book, the Vistas. What is the chapter's name? The third level by Jack Finney. All right. So I hope learners, you all are ready to understand this chapter. This chapter is a little complicated. Many of you don't understand the correct thing. What is the correct, what is actually the third level referring to by the author Jack Finney. So let's begin with the chapter, okay? So here, learners, before I begin, let me again brief you a little about the Unacademy. So in the Unacademy, you are learning in a platform in which you get very good educators of all the subjects. For your class 12 preparation, you can understand each and every subject in a very clear, with a very clear concept you understand. Now, in the Unacademy, the chapters are taught, the question answers are dealt after every three class of the explanation, word meanings, everything, the MCQs, then you have a doubt clearing section class. After the doubt clearing class, you all attend the mega quiz. So the mega quiz is full of MCQs and these prepare you for further competitive exams. So Unacademy is such a platform where you are fully ready for your exam of CBSE. Okay, so if you want to take the subscription for the plus courses, please give my referral code NUPUR10 to get the additional discount. Okay, students, so you come to my plus classes and there we have a very interactive class. So some of my students are also here. They all know that how interactive it is. They ask me, the doubts are cleared, every little thing of the chapter, every section of the chapter is explained in the plus courses. So here we start the chapter, you see. So today, what I told you that I will start from the first chapter from the Vista book of your class 12, the third level, which is written by Jack Finney. So before we start reading the chapter, let us be acquainted with the author. Hello all, good evening dear Ishika, good evening, Poonam, good evening. All of you are here ready. Okay, follow the chapter all of you. So here about the author, as I was telling, the author's name is Jack Finney. All right, so the full name is of the author is Walter Braden Jack Finney. So what is his lifespan? His lifespan is 1911 to 1955. So he was an American writer and mainly he was known for his contributions to the science fiction genre. What is the meaning of genre? Means a group or category. So what was his group of write? What was the category in which he wrote? It was mainly the science fiction. Now his most popular novels, excuse me, his most popular novels are The Body Snatchers, that was written in 1955, and Time and Again, which was written in 1970. Although throughout his career, he published how many? Nearly 50 novels that encompasses the noir. Noir. Noir means a genre, that is a category of crime film or fiction characterized by cynicism, fatalism, and moral ambiguity. Thriller and comedy genres also he has attempted. So this is the introduction of the author Jack Finney. So what is his lifespan? 1911 to 1995. Now learners, here I am introducing about the author because it's very necessary for you to know. It is very necessary to know about the author's lifespan. So what happens? So when you know the author's lifespan, you understand that at what time he lived, and therefore the time he lived, the time in which he lived, the society in which we lived reflects in the writings of the authors and the poets. Now you see 1911 to 1995. So you very clearly you can understand that in this period both the world wars happened, isn't it? So the First World War. Now in the world wars, what happened, learners? That in the world wars, the whole world was involved. All the countries of the world was involved. They were all involved. Now, Jack Finney lived in the time between 1911 to 1995. So, in 1914 to 1919, the First World War took place. Okay. Now, after 1990, just after 20 years, the Second World War started, that is in 1939 to 1945, the Second World War happened. It took place. 1939 to 1945, the Second World War took place. Now you see, this story, the third level, is written in the backdrop of 1950. So it is written in the backdrop of 1950. So here you see Ankit, good afternoon, dear. Good evening, sorry, good evening. All of you are following. Shivakshi, hello, dear. Follow this chapter very attentively. Yes. Okay. So what I was telling you, that this story is written in the backdrop of 1950. And this story has what kind of writing technique? It has the narrative technique. All right. So next we move to, now what is the chapter's name? The third level. Now learners, you will be very much confused of the name, the third level. You must have read the story and what you have understood by it. What is actually the third level? So I have given you a little explanation of this, that what does actually the third level refer to? What does the third level refer to? All right? The third level refer to. Now, in this story, what happens? The author provides a very clear intersection of time and space. All right? There is a very clear intersection of time and space. Now, what is actually the third level? You see. Now, here you see in the what I have given you here, that with the use of time travel technique, what happens? The author connects the world of fantasy and reality. All right. The author presents what? A psychological journey of the narrator. Now, in this story, there is the narrator whose name is Charlie. So what do you find here? There is a psychological journey of the narrator, whose name is Charlie, into the past. That is, what is the past? That is his imaginative world. That is his past. That is the world of fantasy. That is not the real world. All right. Now you see, into the world of fantasy, to the present. To the present means the present time in which he lived. All right. So what is the third? Actually, what is the third level? You see. Now the third level, here you see, the third level refers to what? To an additional floor at the Grand Central Station, which originally had only two levels. And Charlie, the narrator, was actually hallucinating one night while going home when he reached the third level. Now you understand, learners, what it is. That particular night, as Charlie was, what happened? He was actually, he went into hallucination. Hallucination means what? It is away from the practical time. It is a kind of a dream. Hallucination is a kind of dream in which you, in the which a person sees while he is awake. So that was hallucination. So what actually happened? Charlie was actually hallucinating. He was returning home after his night shift duty, and he was at the Grand Central Station, which is in New York. So always the Grand Central Station had two levels, that is, two platforms were there. But that on that particular night, he could find a third level. He went into a third level which is not existing, which was his imagination. That level was his imagination, in which he goes to the land of the, what is that? The world of fantasy. That is, he goes to Galesburg, Illinois, which was his childhood place, residential place. All right. So the third, you have understood what is the third level referring to? It is just an imaginative level by the narrator Charlie, who went into the world of fantasy to that. By how? By hallucination. So according to Charlie, what happened? The third level, you see, according to Charlie, the third level was the Grand Central Station subway. So where did he find the subway which he was there in the Grand Central Station in New York? That subway, he thought it to be the third level, which will carry passengers. And where he was thinking of going in that third level? To Galesburg, Illinois. All right. The station's third stage was a means of relief. So the station's third level, the station's third stage was a means of relief from the harsh realities of everyday life for Charlie. So what was the third level? The third level was actually, it was a relief. It was a respite for Charlie, which was away from his harsh reality of his present time. What it provided? It provided him with a foundation where fantasy and reality could be connected. So, in that level, in the third level, Charlie could find the intersection of both the reality and the fantasy. And why fantasy? Because he moved into the tunnel, he moved into the corridor, which was not actually existing. It was all his brain work, it was all psychological, that he had created the third level. He entered into the third level where he connects with the fantasy and the reality. All right. So this is the third level. Now you see the story here as it presents the third level. The presidents of the New York Central and the New York, New Haven, and Hartford railroads will swear on a stack of timetables that there are only two. What are only two? Only two levels of platforms were there. But I say there are three. Who is this I? I is Charlie, the narrator. But what he says that there are three levels, because I have been on the third level of the Grand Central Station. yes, I have taken the obvious step. So he says that he had taken a third level also, third level platform also at the Grand Central Station in New York. But then what was obvious? Obviously, he went to the psychiatrist to ask about it. Now what happens, you see? He said, yes, I have taken the obvious step. I talked to a psychiatrist, friend of mine. So, what did he do? He talked to the psychiatrist friend of his, whose name was Sam Venner. Learners, you will find it in later part of the chapter. The name also is mentioned. And at the Grand Central Station, and he said it was a walking dream with fulfillment. So when he mentioned it, so he said at that time the psychiatrist told him that it was the actually, what was it? It was a walking dream wish fulfillment, which means hallucination. Walking dream wish fulfillment. What is hallucination? It is a dream which you see when you are awake. You go into that dream. That is hallucination. So the psychiatrist also said that it was a walking dream wish fulfillment. He said, I was unhappy. And then the psychiatrist told that the narrator was finding all these third levels because he must be an unhappy person. All right. Now, here he was unhappy of what? Because of the reality, because of the modern life, which was what? Which is mentioned here, you see of he said I was unhappy. That made my wife kind of mad. But he explained that he meant the modern world is full of insecurity, fear, war, worry, and all the rest of it. So these are the reasons why Charlie was unhappy. That is, the modern world was full of insecurity due to Vishnu. Good evening. Okay. Okay, all of you are here. Okay, what I was telling that in the third level, the psychiatrist told that he was unhappy because of the insecurities of modern life, which all were caused because of war, worry, stress, fear, all these things. So, as I told you in the beginning of the chapter only, that this story is written in the backdrop of 1950. That is, the author has experienced the First World War, the Second World War, and he writes these stories, these uh, problems in his stories. All right. So this is what here, and that I just want to escape. So Charlie, the narrator, wanted to escape from the unhappy modern life to the third level, which was actually the world of fantasy. So what is actually there? It provided him, here it is mentioned, no? It provided him with a foundation where fantasy and reality could be connected. Good evening, Sanjana. Shishir, good evening, dear Vishnu. Good evening. I hope you all are understanding the chapter. It's a little confusing, but if you understand, it's very interesting. All right. Now you see the setting I am giving. Now, in the setting, what happens, as I told you, the Grand Central Station is only having two platforms, two levels. And the third level is his fantasy world. All right. The third level is the fantasy world. So the real world is what? The Grand Central Station. All right, which is in New York. The real world is the Grand Central Station, which is the real world in New York. Now, what is the fantasy world? The fantasy world is this is actually the third level. Sorry. So this is actually the third level, which is the fantasy world, in which he goes in the year 1894. All right, students, he goes there he goes in the year 1894. Now you see the next. Now here in this story, what you get, in this story, you are getting an intersection of time and space in the story. What is the intersection? It is intersection means interconnected with time and space. Is modern time and space is the fantasy, the world of fantasy. So here as it is, I have given you the write-up. There are several instances in the story that show a time-space intersection. So what is it do? It is giving, okay, Vishnu, what? Vishnu Pathak. Okay, Vishnu Pathak. I am Muskan Vishnu Pathak. But then your name is showing Vishnu Pathak. Muskan Vishnu Pathak. Muskan Pathak. Okay, okay. But your name is showing this. Okay, good. You follow the class. So here, firstly, what happened? There are several instances in the story that show the time-space intersection. Firstly, Grand Central Station first two floors are presently located when the third floor existed in 1890s. Now, in the story, the narrator Charlie observes that after that night shift, when he enters into the third level, he understands when he sees the newsboy having the journal which was named as the World newspaper, and that the World newspaper actually existed in 1890s. So the narrator very well understood that he has traveled into the past, that was in 1890s, because he had seen that newspaper, The World, in the library for that day. And what was the date? 11th June 1890. What is the date given here? 11th June 1800 and next page it is given 11th June 1894. All right. So what happens? Okay. So next you see, secondly, Charlie and his wife Louisa are living in the present time. So this is the intersection of time and space in the story. Charlie and his wife, what is her name? Louisa. She is living in the present time and rushing to get old currency to buy two tickets. Now this is another intersection of time and space. Now they are, Charlie is rushing to buy the old currency of 1894 so that he can take his wife Louisa to that world of fantasy where he can buy the tickets also with the old currency. And to 1894 Galesburg. Additionally, the platform's old design. Now, all these are what? Intersection, where you see the intermixing of time and space. Now, in the third level, what does Charlie see? That the station is also an archaic one. The station is an old setting, and which is very distinct from the first two levels. Which is very distinct means which is very different from the first two levels of the Grand Central Station. In fact, the archaic means old way, in which people dress, the dresses are mentioned, and the journal, the world is mentioned, all dated June 11th, 1894. Also contrast, now this is world, okay, not the, this is world here. This you change, this is the world. All right. Also contrast with the real-time culture and life of Charlie. So this is the intersection of time and space. Finally, there is another instance that the letter sent to Charlie's grandfather on 18 July 1894 shows the convergence of time and space as the sender. Convergence means that the time, the picture of the time and space, because as the sender, that is Charlie's friend Sam, had sent that letter. and the receiver, Charlie himself, belong to the present. So this is how the time and space is given the intersection. So now you see here, learners, now we understand, you have understood what is the third level. So see the page, in which page number 1, page number 2 we are doing now. Now here you see, learners, now we start here, page number 1 itself. But the reason he said, and my friends all agreed, everything points to it, they claimed. My stamp collecting, for example, that's a temporary refuge from reality. So Charlie says that whatever the psychiatrist told, that was correct. Because Charlie had what? He had the hobby of collecting stamps, which is known as philately. He had the hobby of collecting stamps, which is known as philately. So what happens that Charlie is actually collecting the stamps, and what does the psychiatrist tell? That the collecting stamps or philately is also a temporary refuge from reality. What is a temporary refuge? Means temporary relief from the reality, from the present time. When people collect stamps, what do? They go back to the past. They see that in what time, which year, who was the lead ruler at that time. All those pictures are on the stamps. I hope you all have seen the stamps, the different stamps. All right. So these are the different stamps which are which come under the hobby what? The philately. So here, the psychiatrist told to Charlie that his hobby of in collecting stamps was also a temporary refuge from the reality. Well, maybe, but my grandfather did not need any refuge from reality. Now, Charlie is explaining that his grandfather had also the hobby of collecting stamps, but his grandfather lived a long time back when there was no need of going away from the reality. All right. So things were pretty nice and peaceful in his time, in his day, that is in grandfather's day. From all I hear, and he started my collection. So his grandfather also had the same hobby of collecting stamps. It's a nice collection too. Blocks of 4 of practically every US issue, first day covers, and so on. So the grandfather also collected many kinds of stamps and so on. President Roosevelt also collected stamps. So President Roosevelt also collected stamps. Now President Roosevelt is of the time of Charlie, and he's talking about the time of his grandfather when the grandfather also had the same hobby of collecting stamps. Anyway, here's what happened. Now Charlie tells his story about his discovery of the third level. Now, students, I hope you are understanding what is the third level. It is just a world of fantasy. Okay, so here, one night last summer, I worked late at the office. I was in a hurry to get uptown to my apartment, so I decided to take the subway from Grand Central because it's faster than the bus. So one night, after the night shift, Charlie was taking the subway of the Grand Central station because it used to be faster than taking a bus. He wanted to go where? He was in a hurry to get uptown. Uptown, the word meaning is the residential area in US. That is the uptown. It is away from the commercial area. So he wanted to get to the uptown very fast to that after the night shift duty, and he took the subway. Remember, learners, that he took what? The subway. And that subway only, he thinks it to be the third level where he travels into the world of fantasy. Okay? Now I don't know why this should have happened to me. So Charlie is very aware of his present time. He was understanding that why actually was happening to him like this. I'm just an ordinary guy and named Charlie. So he mentions that he is an ordinary person. And what was his name? His name is Charlie. 31 years old, and I was wearing a tan gabardine suit and a straw hat with a fancy band. So what was he wearing? He was wearing a tan gabardine. Means tan means light brown overcoat, and with a straw hat. That is, he was wearing the dress of the modern time, of the reality. But when he goes to that level, to the third level, he finds the dresses of the people very different. All right. I hope you all are understanding. So I passed a dozen men who looked just like me. Okay, so what is it? Okay, you all are understanding. Ankit, Vishnu, all these, Muskan, Ishika, all of you. All right. So here you see, who looked. I passed a dozen men and who looked just like me. So he's in the third level. He looked a dozen of men who looked just like him. And I wasn't trying to escape from anything. I just wanted to get home to my wife, Louisa. I turned into the Grand Central from Vanderbilt Avenue and went down the steps to the first level. Now, he has not yet gone into the third level. He has just passed the first level where you take trains like the 20th century. That is, in the first level, what trains you get? The name of the train is 20th century. Then I walked down another flight to the second level. So he walked down to another flight in the second level of the Grand Central Station, where the suburban trains leave. So in the second level, the suburban trains left from that place. And where the suburban trains leave from, ducked into an arched doorway. Now, does he enter? He enters into, ducked into means bent inside and went into the arched means round doorway into heading for the subway and got lost. So he entered that, he ducked into the arched doorway and there he got lost. That is, he entered the third level now. That's easy to do. I have been in and out of Grand Central hundreds of times, but I am always bumping into new doorways and stairs and corridors. So, what happened? He entered into that because the Grand Central Station, as Charlie mentions, is a network of a huge station. So, always he gets into different ways. And I got into a tunnel about a mile long and came out in the lobby of the Roosevelt Hotel. So at times he used to get out into the Roosevelt Hotel, or other times he used to get to the building of the 46th Street, 3 blocks away. So this all happened because it was a huge station. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree. So what did he think? That was his present time. That was his in his modern times that happened. So here what does he see? That he at times used to get on different points. It was so confusing. It was so spread, just like a tree. It is mentioned here. Sometimes I think Grand Central is growing like a tree. Okay, we have done here. Now here you see. So Grand Central, and they are pushing out new corridors, staircases like routes. There's probably a long tunnel. So in the Grand Central Station, what else did he see? There was probably a long tunnel, and that nobody knows about, feeling its way under the city right now on its way to Times Square. So nobody knew, that is, there was a secret way. Nobody knew means there was a secret tunnel under the city to the Times Square, which he finds it to be the entry of the third level on the, or maybe the Central Park. So there was also always a secret way also. So nobody knows about feeling its way under the city right now. on its way to the Times Square and maybe another to the Central Park. And maybe because for so many people through the years, Grand Central has been an exit. So, for many people, Grand Central had been an exit, a way of escape. Maybe that's how the tunnel I got into. So you're following learners that the Grand Central had such a network. It was just like a tree. It had its roots spread. So through the Grand Central, people can also go into unknown paths, just as Charlie went into the third level. It was an escape, as it is mentioned. And where did he enter? He entered into the tunnel. I got into that was an escape. That tunnel where he entered, that was the third levels, starting of the third level. But I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. Now the corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong. So he entered the third level, and there was a through the tunnel, and there was the corridor in which he entered, and he was just angling his way, going from the different sides he was going, and but I kept on walking. All I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps. Now, in that third level, who was there? There was no one else. There was no other person there. Only he could hear his own footsteps there. And I did not pass a soul. Means I did not pass a soul means he could not find any other person in that third level, because that third level was his imagination, was his world of fantasy, which was away from the reality. So what is the theme of the story? Learners, what is the theme of the story? Now you follow. The theme of the story is, of course, the negative impact of the modern life. Therefore, what do the people want? The people want to escape that negative impact of modern life and escape to the world of fantasy. Now, another theme is that it also brings out the common man's craving to go into a beautiful place away from the hustle and bustle of the modern life. This is the theme actually. Are you getting? Now, another theme is, of course, another theme of the story is a desire to live in the past through the hobby philately. And what does the psychiatrist also mention? That the hobby of philately is just a temporary refuge from the reality. I hope you're understood till here. Now he has entered into the third level. Now you see here, there was no soul also, no footsteps, only he was in the third level, because it was his imaginative way. It was his imagination, the third level. So then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead. That means that means open space and people talking. And after that, what he heard? What did he hear? He heard that people were talking there. Now the tunnel turned sharp left, and I went down a short flight of stairs and came out on the third level grandstand. So what did he hear? The tunnel turned sharp left, and he took a short flight of stairs, and he came down to the third level of the Grand Central Station. That is all his imagination, all his world of fantasy. Now you see the next for that, after that, what happened? For just a moment, I thought I was back on the second level, but I was back on the second level. So what did he think? That there were people talking. So he thought that he had come back on the second level, but it was not, because but I saw the room was smaller. What did he see? That the room was smaller than the first level and the second level. So it was the third level, his fantasy. There were fewer ticket windows, because you see, this third level is actually Yes. Okay. All right. So here the third level actually was which year? 1894. So the setting is also different. The platform is also different. There were fewer ticket counters, ticket windows, train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking, unlike the second level. And the man in the booth also wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. And what was he wearing? A green eye shade and the long sleeve protectors also. The lights were dim and sort of flickering. Now, in 1894, of course, there was not so much um, advancement of the lights. So they were flickering. And across the station, a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. So in the olden days, they used to take out the watch from his vest pocket, means from his small coat on the upper level pocket. He takes out and he sees the watch. And he was wearing what? You see, the people dressing in the third level is also different. And what is the third level? That is the 1894 at the third level. So they were having, he snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch and frowned. He wore a handlebar mustache. That is, the mustache means the mustache was handlebar. This is a long one, mustaches. A woman walked in through the train gate and she wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves. So the woman, how was she wearing? What kind of dress? With mutton sleeves. That is, from here it is puffed and there are buttons at the wrist, or at the forearm there are the buttons, and the sleeves are all puffed, and skirts to the top of her high button shoes. Now all these are description of the dress of 1894, in which is the third level for Charlie. And I caught a glimpse of locomotive, a very small Carrier and Eves locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack, and then I knew. What he knew? He knew that he was in the year 1894. He was not in his own present time of the modern world. Now you see next, to make sure, what did he do? He, to make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers. And what did he see? He saw he went to the newspaper boy and he saw the paper, the newspaper, the journal, the world. All right. So he found in the public library, Charlie found it that it was printed in June 11th, 1894. So what did he do? He turned towards the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at the Grand Central Station, he could buy tickets that would take Louisa and him to the anywhere in the United States he wanted to. So he thought that he would make that third level a reality and he would bring his wife, Louisa, to go into that level, that is to Galesburg, Illinois. Have you ever been there? It's a wonderful town. Now he gives the picture of his fantasy world. That is, Galesburg is a wonderful town. There are long trees and huge, tremendous trees whose branches cover on the road and make a rooftop. And people there were smoking cigars, and women were also sitting there fanning with a palm leaf hand fans. And to be back there with the First World War. Now, here you see, with fireflies, all, and it was what? It was a very peaceful world. And what time was it? Now, this line is very important. To be there with the First World War with 20 years off. So 1894, after 1894, 20 years it was behind the First World War. I told you that the story, the author lives between 1900 from 1911. So 1914 was the World War, which is mentioned here, First World War. So the time in which Charlie entered was 20 years back of the First World War, that was 1894. And what did he want? He wanted 2 tickets for that, means for that third level. All right. So here you see he wanted the 2 tickets, and after that, what happened? After that, he goes uh, to the clerk and wants to get the ticket. Now the clerk figured this fare. He glanced at my fancy handbag, but he figured the fare. So the clerk, what did he see? He could see that he was unable to give the ticket because the money which Charlie was carrying was of the modern currency. And the clerk, why did he look at him? Because he belonged to that third level. Now Charlie is in fantasy, he's traveling, but there is an intersection of what? Time and space. He is in his modern times. Everything, his currency is also in the modern times. But the clerk, which was sitting there in the third level, he was actually giving the tickets of. So here he moved out fast, and there's nothing nice about jail, even in 1894. So Charlie very well understood that there was nothing very good about the third level 1894, because jail is no better in whichever year, whichever time you live. So after this, you see the So yeah, after this, I hope students, you all have the book with you. So I can just relate you the story here. Now here you see in this chapter, further I read, and that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. And next day during lunch hour. So what happened next day during the lunch hour? I drew $300. So $300 out of the bank. So what happened the next day? What did he do? He took out $300, and in the old currency he got only $200. So but that was also acceptable by Charlie. Why that was acceptable by Charlie? Because he was actually knowing that in the third level in the 1894, what actually happened, the things were much cheaper. So even if he had $200, he would be able to manage. Okay. Now you see in the book, if you have, you please see. So here, and that was that. I left the same way I came, I suppose. Next day, during lunch hour, I drew $300. So here we have done, but I have never again found the corridor. So this is the reality. The next day, what did he do? He exchanged the modern money with the old currency. But then, after that, he never found the third level. That day only, after the night shift duty, he had entered into the tunnel as an escape, and through that tunnel into the corridor, he found the ticket counter, which was of the third level, in which he saw all old setting, people wearing old dresses, and he knew that he had reached the third level. So for the next day, he thought that he will change the currency to old currency, and with his wife, he would go to the third level, and with his wife, he would go to the third level, but he did not find the third level. But I never found the Grand Central Station, although I have tried often enough. Louisa was pretty worried, and when I told her all this, and did not want me to look for the third level. So Louisa was very worried that why her husband was finding the third level when it was not existing. So she told him not to worry. And I went back to my stand. So What another respite he had? What another refuge he had? He went back to his stamp collection. And here you see, but now we are both looking every weekend, because now we have proof that the third level is still there, because my friend Sam Venner disappeared. So Sam Venner, the psychiatrist, disappeared. And they were thinking, then where can he disappear? Of course, he too must have gone to the third level. My friends, nobody knew where, but I sort of suspected, because Sam's a city boy and I used to tell him about Galesburg. So Sam also disappeared into the third level. And because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, sorry, before this, I went to school there, and he always said he liked the sound of the place. And that's where he is, all right, in 1894. So they find that Sam was in the third level in 1894. He too has escaped. How he has escaped? He also escaped through the third level imagination. Because one night, fussing with my stamp collection, I found, well, do you know what a first day cover is? When a new stamp is issued, stamp collectors buy some and use them to mail envelope to themselves on the very first day of the sale. So the first day cover, what it is, the stamp collectors, what they used to buy the stamp on the first day and used to stamp on an empty envelope and post it to their own address. All right. So in that way, they could collect that particular stamp of that day and keep it with themselves. So that is called first day cover. So he got all first day cover, and the postmark proves of course, the date of the issue of the stamp. The envelope is called the envelope is called a first day cover. They never opened, and you just blank paper in the envelope. That night, among my oldest first day covers, I found one that should not have been there. But there it was. It was there because someone had mailed it to my grandfather at his home in Galesburg. That's what the address on the envelope said. So there was a first day envelope which was not empty. It had a paper in it. Why? Because that was letter was posted by Sam Venner, who entered into the third level, and he must have posted it to his grandfather, or addressed it to his grandfather, but the letter was received by Charlie. So you see, Sam Venner was of the time of Charlie, and Sam Venner actually entered into the third level, and he must have written a letter to Charlie addressing that Charlie and Louisa are also invited to the third level, to the place Galesburg, Illinois, where Sam Venner was there. So that's what the address on the envelope said, and it had been there since July 1894. All the postmark showed that, yet I did not remember at all. The stamp was a 6 cent. The stamp was also of 6 cent, dull brown, with a picture of President Garfield. That is not the president of Charlie's time. Naturally, when the envelope came to Granddad in the mail, it went right into his collection and stayed there. Still, I took it out and opened it. The paper inside wasn't blank, it read, Charlie, the address you see, Galesburg, Illinois, 1894. Charlie, I got to wishing you that you were right. Then I got to believing you were right. And Charlie, it is true. I found the third level. I've been here for 2 weeks, and right now down the street at the Daily, someone is playing a piano, and they are all out on the front porch singing, Seeing Nellie Home. And I am invited over for lemonade. Come on back, Charlie and Louisa. Keep looking till you find the third level. It's worth it, believe me. So Sam writes all this. He writes the date of the letter to be 1894, and he says that he is having a very good time. He is actually in the he is listening to a song, and of course he is also been invited to for a lemonade in over to Dali's house, and he also invites Charlie and Louisa. Okay, so here you see, actually this letter was, now the note is signed by Sam. At the stamp and coin store I go to, I found out that Sam bought $800 worth of old style currency. So, what did Charlie find out? That Sam too had bought an $8 currency in the old currency. And that ought to set him up there in a nice little hay feed and grain business. So, what he planned to start there? Hay, wheat, hay, feed, and grain business there. And he always said that what he really wished he could do, and he certainly can't go back to his old business. Not in Galesburg, Illinois in 1894, his old business. Why? Sam was my psychiatrist. Now, this is a last ending, is little confusing. It is, we say, and it is said that it is an open-ended story. Now, it is left to the readers to interpret what can be it. So, one thought can always come that this letter must be the imagination of Charlie himself. He must have himself written that letter. Another thought can come that Sam Venner too had entered into the third level and written this letter in the name of Charlie to, like that. And of course it may be of the envelope was a first cover letter, and it came to Charlie, and this is how he took it. And he very well knew that Sam Venner, who was in the third level, was all imagination, because actually he was living, the date he had given is 1894, but the time which was they were living was the modern times, where Sam Venner was his psychiatrist, isn't it? So Sam Venner was the psychiatrist, and he also said that Galesburg, Illinois, he liked the place, and he too went into, of course, the third level. Are you following it? He went into the third level, he wrote that letter, and thus Charlie got the letter among the letters, among his stamp collection, and this is how this letter can be interpreted. So it is up to the readers. So these two interpretations we can give, that either Sam wrote the letter while going to the third level, or it was Charlie's imagination and he himself must have written a letter in the name of Sam Venner, which was lying among his stamp collection envelopes. All right. So here, this is the entire story which you are reading. I hope you all have understood what is the third level, and the settings you have understood, intersection of time and space you understood. And now, learners, let me tell you a little more about the subscription. Now, you please subscribe to my video at the Unacademy platform, and you like and share with your friends, and go through the entire video, understand the chapter, and don't forget to press the bell button so that you can get all the updates from the Unacademy. Whatever is being relayed to the YouTube, you can get. All right. So if you want to, if you are not a subscriber to the Unacademy, you can join the plus course of Unacademy, and you can use the referral code NUPUR10 to get an additional discount. So here is, I have given you the additional discount here you can have if you join the plus course, and here you will get the top educators of India in the Unacademy platform, where all your subjects you can prepare well. All right, and get a very highly, very good result in the CBSE, which is, of course, the threshold to your beautiful career. Okay, thank you.